Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into 3 disturbing true winter horror stories that'll make you think twice about venturing into a snowstorm. These are real, documented accounts, no paranormal nonsense, just the raw, terrifying reality of what happens when winter's icy grip brings out the worst in humanity. Each story is packed with chilling details to pull you into the horror, so settle in for a long, unsettling ride. Story 1. The Snowbound Strangler. In January 1997, Leadville, Colorado, a high-altitude town nestled in the Rockies, was slammed by a catastrophic blizzard that buried the area in over 6 feet of snow across 3 days. Winds screamed at 60 miles an hour, snapping power lines and plunging homes into darkness. Temperatures sank to -30, and roads were choked with drifts, stranding residents and halting emergency services. Sarah Mitchell, a 24-year-old barista with a warm smile, lived alone in a 1-bedroom cabin on the town's fringes. She'd moved from Denver to escape city life, drawn to Leadville's quiet trails and snowy vistas, but that solitude became her undoing. On the 5th night of the storm, Sarah was rationing her last logs in a flickering wood stove, her breath visible in the dim light. Unbeknownst to her, David Kessler, a 35-year-old drifter with a rap sheet of assaults and burglaries, was holed up in a derelict shed 3/4 of a mile away. Kessler had been dodging police for months, living off stolen scraps. Frostbitten, starving, and half-mad from the cold, he spotted Sarah's cabin, its faint glow a beacon in the whiteout. He trudged through waist-deep snow, his fingers numb, and reached her back porch. Using a rusted tire iron from the shed, he shattered a window, the sound muffled by the howling wind. Sarah, startled from her chair, grabbed a kitchen knife and shouted for him to leave. Kessler, wiry but strong, rushed her, knocking the knife away. When she clawed at his face, he seized a phone cord from a nearby table and strangled her, his hands trembling as her struggles faded. He spent hours in the cabin, wolfing down her canned soup, pocketing $90 from her purse, and stealing her insulated parka and a flashlight. He slipped back into the storm, leaving Sarah's body sprawled by the stove. The next afternoon, Tom Hargrove, a 62-year-old retiree who lived a half-mile away, fought through the snow to check on her, driven by a bad feeling. He found the broken window in Sarah's body, her face frozen in terror. With no working phones, Tom marked the cabin with a red scarf to guide police once the roads cleared. It took 3 days for a snowplow to reach Leadville's outskirts, and sheriff's deputies confirmed the murder. Kessler was nabbed 12 days later in a dive bar 40 miles away, Sarah's parka still zipped over his filthy clothes. Under questioning, he broke, admitting the storm's chaos let him move unseen. Sarah's death rocked Leadville, a grim lesson that winter's isolation can lure predators to even the safest homes. Story 2. The Ice Road Betrayal. In February 2010, a merciless snowstorm swept across Manitoba, Canada, turning the remote ice roads of Highway 391 into a frozen death trap. Snow fell in sheets, reducing visibility to a few feet, and gusts rocked vehicles off their paths. Mark Tremblay, a 42-year-old truck driver with 16 years hauling supplies to northern outposts, was grinding through the storm in his 18-wheeler, his wipers struggling against the ice. Around 1 a.m., with the mercury at -35, Mark spotted a figure on the roadside, waving a scarf like a distress signal. The man, who introduced himself as Paul, wore a threadbare jacket, his face chapped red from the cold. He spun a tail of his pickup sliding into a ditch, leaving him stranded for hours. Mark, a gruff but kind-hearted man known for aiding stranded drivers, waved him into the cab, handing over a thermos of coffee and a spare blanket. Paul thawed out, chatting about his supposed job as a mechanic in Thompson, 60 miles north. Mark, focused on the slick road, didn't notice Paul's eyes flicking to the dashboard, where Mark's wallet sat next to a pack of smokes. 40 minutes in, as they crawled through a barren stretch flanked by snowbanks, Paul's voice hardened. He demanded Mark's wallet, phone, and keys, pulling a 6-inch hunting knife from his boot. Mark, caught off guard, tried to talk him down, but Paul lunged, driving the blade into Mark's right shoulder. Blood gushed, soaking his flannel and dripping onto the seat. Pain exploded, but Mark, a former high school wrestler, reacted fast. He slammed the brakes, the truck skidding wildly, and grabbed Paul's wrist, twisting until the knife fell. The two grappled, the cab a chaos of elbows and curses. Mark landed a punch, dazing Paul, then kicked open the passenger door and shoved him out into a snowbank, where he vanished in the swirling white. Mark, dizzy from blood loss, floored the gas, driving 30 miles to a lone gas station, his left hand clamping the wound. He stumbled inside, collapsing as the clerk, a 19-year-old kid, fumbled for the phone to call 911. A medevac chopper braved the storm to airlift Mark to Winnipeg, where surgeons saved his life after 4 hours in the OR. Police, using Mark's description, hunted for Paul, whose real name was Daniel Roy, a 29-year-old fugitive wanted for armed robberies in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Roy was caught 5 days later, hiding in a hunting shack, Mark's thermos still in his pack. Mark survived, but needed 6 months of rehab and lost 50% mobility in his arm, forcing him to retire from trucking. The betrayal, in the dead of a frozen night with no help for miles, shows how winter's desolation can turn a kind gesture into a fight for survival. Story 3. The Cabin Fever Killer. In December 1988, 5 college friends, Emily Carter, Brian Heller, Mike Larson, and 2 others, all in their mid-20s, rented a remote cabin in New York's Adirondack Mountains for a winter break. The group, bonded over years at Syracuse University, planned a week of skiing, snowboarding, and partying. The cabin, a weathered 2-story surrounded by dense pines, sat 15 miles from the nearest town, accessible only by a narrow dirt road. It had a wood stove, a stack of board games, and a hunting rifle locked in a closet left by the owner. On day 2, a monstrous snowstorm roared in, dumping 8 feet of snow in 72 hours. The road disappeared, their Jeep Cherokee was buried to its roof, and the cabin's phone line went dead. At first, the group leaned into the adventure, stoking the fire, cracking open a case of beer, and swapping stories under flickering oil lamps. But Brian Heller, a 29-year-old grad student in engineering, started acting strange. Unbeknownst to his friends, Brian had been battling undiagnosed schizophrenia, his symptoms flaring under stress. He'd been skipping therapy and hiding his struggles, not wanting to burden the group. As the storm stretched into day 6, the cabin's coziness turned suffocating. Food dwindled to canned corn and stale bread, the woodpile shrank, and the endless gray light frayed tempers. Brian grew quiet, sitting alone by the window, staring into the snow. He began muttering about shadows moving outside, though his friends saw nothing. By day 8, tensions boiled. Mike, frustrated, snapped at Brian for hogging the last coffee. Brian, eyes wild, accused the group of whispering plans to ditch him in the storm. His paranoia festered, fed by sleepless nights and the cabin's claustrophobia. On the 10th night, after a shouting match over a spilled bottle of whiskey, Brian snapped. He pried open the storage closet, grabbing the .30-06 rifle and a box of ammo. Screaming that they were traitors plotting to kill him, he fired, hitting Emily Carter, a 26-year-old art major, in the chest. She collapsed, dead before she hit the floor. Mike Larson, diving for cover, took a bullet in the thigh, blood pooling on the pine boards. The others, Jen, Chris, and Sarah, rushed Brian, tackling him after a desperate struggle. Jen, a former soccer player, pinned his arms while Chris tied his wrists with a belt and duct tape. For 4 days, they huddled in the cabin, Mike slipping in and out of consciousness, his wound crudely bandaged with torn shirts. Brian ranted nonstop, claiming the snow itself was watching them. Emily's body, wrapped in a tarp, lay on the porch, preserved by the sub-zero cold. The group burned furniture to stay warm, their food gone, surviving on melted snow. When state troopers finally reached the cabin on snowmobiles, they found a scene of devastation. Brian was arrested, later diagnosed with severe schizophrenia, and committed to a psychiatric hospital after a trial that gripped the region. Mike survived but needed 2 surgeries and a year of rehab to walk again. Jen, Chris, and Sarah, scarred by guilt and nightmares, drifted apart, haunted by the memory of Emily's laugh cut short. The storm's relentless confinement combined ascending the throne of madness. Brian's fragile mind shattered, turning a dream vacation into a blood-soaked tragedy. These stories, Sarah's murder in her own home, Mark's betrayal on a desolate road, and Brian's descent into madness, show how winter's brutal conditions can amplify desperation, deceit, and psychological collapse. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video.